I could have turned back, ignored it, pretended I hadn't seen a thing. But I didn't. Because in that single heart-stopping moment when I finally realized exactly what I was looking at, I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that nothing in my carefully constructed life would ever be the same again. And yes, if we are being honest, I was the one at fault here. Because in a way, I was the one who started it. And undeniably, I was the one who didn't stop it. Welcome, American Affairs. Today, we have a true story. A bitter confession about a betrayal that took place under one roof. A story about blurred lines and uncontrollable forbidden emotions. My husband Richard was at work. The house was quiet, as it so often was. Richard was a good man, a husband who provided well for us financially. But there was always an invisible distance between us. He was immersed in his work, and I was immersed in my own quiet loneliness in this vast house. And then I heard faint rhythmic noises coming from upstairs. My stepson Liam was in his room. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just another quiet afternoon with a young man lost in his own world. But then I thought maybe he'd like a coffee. A little conversation might be nice to break the silence. As I walked up the stairs, I tried to figure out where the distinct sounds were coming from. When I got closer to his room, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. I took a soft breath, my hand raised, about to call out to him. But then my eyes landed on Liam, and I froze. He was sitting on his bed, his laptop balanced on his lap, the bright flickering screen casting a glow on his focused face. His hands moved quickly, and at first I thought he was just watching something exciting, maybe an action movie or a video game. But as I instinctively took one more silent step, changing my viewing angle just slightly, I felt the blood drain from my face. That was the moment I realized exactly what Liam, my 23-year-old stepson, was doing. My eyes caught the reflection on his laptop screen, and a cold, shocking wave washed over me. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't wanted to see this. Liam scrambled, fumbling to compose himself, frantically lowering the volume on his laptop. But it was far too late. The moment had already happened, already imprinted itself on my mind. When our eyes finally met, his face turned a deep, furious red. The shame, the mortification in his young eyes, undeniable. I'm so sorry," he stammered, his gaze quickly darting away, unable to meet mine. I felt frozen in place, my own mind reeling. The door," I started to say, but I had no idea what I was even trying to articulate. A strange, confusing sensation began to spread through me. I was embarrassed, yes, deeply so, but my mind was also racing with other thoughts, other feelings. I quickly stepped out of his doorway, my own heart pounding against my chest like a trapped bird. I pressed my cool hands to my burning face, trying to steady my ragged breath. "What the hell was that?" I whispered to myself. What had I just done? Why had I been so careless, so intrusive? But was I the only one at fault here? "Stop it, Sophia," I told myself sternly. The chaos inside me, I knew with an unsettling certainty, was triggered by more than just what I had accidentally seen. Liam was 23 now. He wasn't a child anymore. But I was also 45, a woman who had experienced her own fair share of shame and disappointment in life. I had never been in a situation quite like this before, but I knew intimately what shame felt like. I stood frozen in the hallway for a long time, my heart still racing, running my fingers through my hair, trying to pull myself together. When Liam finally appeared at his doorway, he had changed his shirt, adjusted the collar, cleared his throat, and kept his eyes firmly, studiously averted. "Sophia," he began, I'm really sorry. I thought I'd closed the door all the way." His voice was unsure but sincere. I quickly shook my head, my own gaze looking away down the hall. No, actually, I should be the one apologizing, Liam. I should have knocked before coming in," I said hurriedly, not really knowing what else to say, how else to diffuse the thick, palpable tension between us. Silence. But this wasn't just any ordinary silence. We had lived in the same house for years now. But this was the very first time we had ever truly looked at each other like this, as two separate, complicated adults. This was the first time there had ever been this kind of strange, almost electric tension between us. I should head downstairs and start preparing something for dinner," I said quickly, turning towards the stairs, my voice trembling slightly, desperate to escape. Liam didn't say anything. He just followed me with his eyes as I descended, as if he were trying to piece something new, something confusing together in his mind. Until that evening, we didn't say another word to each other. No texts, no direct eye contact, not even the usual mundane small talk about the weather. But that heavy, charged silence, it whispered between us, a constant reminder that things would never, ever be the same again. At dinner, we sat at the same table in our usual seats, but we still couldn't look directly at each other. The only sound in the vast dining room was the sharp, almost accusatory clinking of silverware against our plates. We needed to talk to somehow ease the suffocating tension. We both knew it, but how? That night passed, then the next day, and the one after that. On the surface, everything seemed to have returned to normal, but nothing really had. Our shared silence only made the invisible, unspoken tension between us grow even stronger, more palpable. And then one afternoon, as I was reading in the living room, Liam came and sat down on the armchair near me. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, the internal struggle, but it was clear he wanted to fix things, to clear the air. "Sophia," he began, his voice low, about the other day. I'm really truly embarrassed and I'm sorry. I didn't want things to be this weird between us. Please," he added, his voice nervous but sincere, "I don't want this to ruin things." I took a deep breath. No matter how strange and unexpected this all was, I knew I needed to put him at ease for both our sakes. I managed a small smile, shrugged slightly and said, "Oh, Liam, believe me, I've had my own fair share of embarrassing moments over the years." Then, in an attempt to normalize the situation, I shared a few of those moments with him. His smile finally relaxed a little, and he nodded, his own visible embarrassment fading slightly. At that moment, it seemed as if the suffocating tension between us had finally, mercifully lifted. But deep down, I knew nothing had truly passed. In fact, that single shared conversation about our vulnerabilities had, in a strange way, completely erased the last of the boundaries between us. And I could feel it with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified me. Things were about to go much, much further. Liam let out a small, relieved chuckle, then lowered his gaze to the table. "I guess we're even now," he said quietly. I frowned slightly, turning to him. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, a genuine curiosity creeping into my voice. For a second, his expression shifted, a flicker of panic, as if he had just realized he had said something he couldn't take back. He rubbed the back of his neck, hesitating for a moment, but he had already started down this path, and now he had no choice but to continue. He took another deep breath, then looked away as he muttered, I've noticed you too, Sophia, in the same way. You just didn't know about it." It felt like a jolt of pure electricity had shot through my body. I froze for a moment, my mind reeling. "What?" I whispered, the weight of his words, his confession pressing down on me. Liam's face was flushed a deep red now, but he kept going. "I never told you because I was too embarrassed, too ashamed, but I never forgot about it. Actually," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper, "it's been something I couldn't get out of my head." My heart was pounding wildly, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. A strange, unfamiliar warmth spread through me. That same foreign sensation that told me something fundamental, something irrevocable, had now changed between us. Liam's words weren't just a simple confession. They had shattered every last fragile boundary that had once existed between us. I looked at him. He was looking at me, too. And by now, we both knew with a certainty that was as terrifying as it was exhilarating, that this was no longer just an ordinary, awkward conversation. The very air in the room had thickened, become charged, electric. Everything had shifted from that day on. Everything, absolutely everything, changed. There had always been a certain respectful, almost formal distance between us before, that invisible, necessary boundary that kept us apart in our respective roles of stepmother and stepson. But now it felt as if that boundary had completely, utterly vanished. Without even consciously realizing it, I had started spending so much more time with Liam. Small moments, seemingly insignificant conversations, but in reality, each one only served to fuel the growing, palpable tension between us. We even started sitting and watching movies together at night again. Before, we would always keep our distance on the large sofa, but now there was an unspoken magnetic pull between us, something we both felt but still never overtly acknowledged. Sometimes when Liam rested his arm casually along the back of the couch, his fingers would accidentally brush against my shoulder. When my hand brushed against his leg as I reached for the remote in the dimly lit room, I felt that strange, unsettling something stir deep inside me. But I kept trying, with waning conviction, to not think about it. One night I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning in my large empty bed. The restlessness inside me refused to let me be. There was, I finally admitted to myself, only one thing, one person on my mind: Liam. This couldn't go on. I knew that. And I needed to set a firm boundary once and for all. If he truly had these feelings for me, I had to address it outright and put a decisive stop to it before things went any further. With that firm, rational thought in my mind, I got out of bed, my heart pounding like crazy, with a new, determined resolve. But my feet, as if with a will of their own, had already taken me, not away, but towards Liam's room. His door was slightly open, and the dim light from his bedside lamp faintly illuminated the room. As I stepped silently inside, I saw him. He was sleeping. For a moment, I stood frozen, caught between caution and curiosity. My gaze lingered far too long, and I instantly regretted even being there. I shouldn't have stepped in. I absolutely should have turned around immediately and left, but I didn't. I just stood there for a few long, silent seconds trying to understand, to process what I was truly feeling. Then I quickly, silently, pulled back from his doorway. There was something inside me, some long, dormant desire that I knew I could no longer ignore. But I had to. I returned to my own room, laid down in my cold bed, but nothing, absolutely nothing, was the same anymore. And that night, I had no idea how much more complicated, how much more dangerous things were about to become. No matter what I did, what I told myself, I found I couldn't resist this growing forbidden closeness with Liam. With each passing day, the boundaries between us blurred even more, and the undeniable magnetic pull between us only got stronger. I didn't even realize when exactly things had gone this far. But the one thing I knew for certain was that turning back was becoming increasingly, terrifyingly impossible. And then, Liam came home like that. He was drunk. The loud noise from the front door, the sound of things being knocked over, the clumsy stumbling sounds, could have easily woken Richard, my husband. But I knew how incredibly hard it was for Richard to wake up once he was deeply asleep. So I quickly, almost instinctively, stepped out of my own room and went to Liam. I didn't even have time to properly fix my own clothes, my thin silk nightgown, before I was standing right next to him in the dark hallway. Liam's eyes were slightly unfocused, and a faint boyish smile played on his lips. "Sophia," he mumbled, his words slurred from the alcohol, but still somehow sincere. Are you real?" I took a deep breath and grabbed his arm, trying to steady him. "Liam, come on. You can't go upstairs like this. We have to be quiet." But Liam's eyes were locked onto my face, his gaze intense, unwavering. He smiled softly, his gaze slowly, deliberately moving over me, noticing every detail. "You know, you're really beautiful, Sophia," he murmured. "Have you always been this way? Or did I just never notice before?" I froze for a second, my own resolve faltering, but then quickly pulled myself together. "Liam, that's enough. Come to the kitchen. I'll make you some strong coffee." I slowly, carefully led him to the kitchen, my primary thought to sober him up a little, to avoid waking Richard. But because of Liam's intense, lingering gaze and the intoxicating things he was saying, something deep inside me was also undeniably beginning to unravel. Liam sat down heavily on one of the kitchen chairs while I hurriedly prepared the coffee. But suddenly, as I turned, the cup slipped from his unsteady hands, spilling hot, dark coffee all over the pristine white counter. "Ah, Liam, you need to be more careful," I whispered quickly, frantically trying to clean up the sticky mess. But Liam just smiled that same soft, infuriating smile. Were you always this sweet, Sophia?" I hurriedly finished cleaning up the kitchen. We couldn't stay here any longer. Richard was sleeping soundly upstairs for now, but with Liam in this unpredictable state, we couldn't afford to make any more noise. "All right, Liam, we're going upstairs now, but you have to be quiet," I warned, slipping my arm around his waist and carefully guiding him toward the stairs. When we finally reached his room, his movements were even more unsteady, more uncoordinated. He clearly needed to change out of his damp, coffee-stained clothes, but he was far too out of it to do it on his own. At first, I fully intended to just turn around, to leave him to it. But when I saw him struggling, fumbling clumsily to take off his own shirt, I found myself almost instinctively helping him. As my own fingers, trembling slightly, reached for the buttons of his shirt, I felt Liam's breathing slow, his body still. At that moment, the palpable charged tension between us once again filled the small, silent room. The silence only served to make it all the more intense, more profound. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew it was wrong. Yet, at the same time, I had no idea what I was truly doing, what I was truly feeling. Liam was looking at me differently now. And this was one of those life-altering moments. One of those fateful, irreversible moments we could never, ever take back. Liam hesitated while changing his clothes after I'd helped him with his shirt. He let his hands fall to his sides and then locked his intense, searching eyes with mine. That was when I realized with a jolt that my own breathing had quickened, had become shallow. It was so incredibly quiet in that small room. The very air felt heavy, almost thick, making it difficult to even breathe properly. "I'm not playing this game anymore, Sophia," he said then, his voice soft at first, but now filled with a new surprising certainty. I stared at him, not blinking, my own heart pounding a frantic, chaotic rhythm in my chest. But what? What game was Liam even trying to say we were playing? "Are you," he added, his voice deepening slightly. "We both caught each other once, and that's it. You don't think about it at all? I know it crosses your mind just before you fall asleep at night." A violent shiver ran through me, making me take a small, involuntary step back. But my feet felt as if they were glued to the floor, unable, or perhaps unwilling to move. "Liam, this isn't right," I said. But my voice, to my own ears, trembled, weak, unconvincing. Liam smiled slightly then, but it wasn't an innocent, boyish smile anymore. We passed the point of deciding what's right a long, long time ago. "Sophia, stop lying to yourself." Then he took a deliberate step forward, and another. He was so incredibly close now that I could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin, could see the dark, intense flecks in his beautiful eyes. He reached up his fingers, then, his touch surprisingly gentle, and trailed them slowly, deliberately, over my cheek. I wanted to look away, to turn my head, but I couldn't, because deep down in that secret, honest part of my soul, I knew he was right. I knew it. And then Liam's lips finally, inevitably, found mine. All the silence, all the tension, all the unspoken desires, the answer to everything was hidden in that single, profound moment. The 1,000 chaotic, conflicting thoughts that had been echoing in my mind for weeks suddenly, blessedly, quieted. All my carefully constructed doubts, all my rationalizations simply faded away into insignificant whispers because I hadn't resisted Liam. Not really. And the devastating truth was that I had never, ever truly wanted to. My hands were trembling, yes, but I didn't pull away. when I saw the raw, unwavering determination in Liam's eyes, I knew there was absolutely nothing left for me to hide behind anymore. I swallowed hard, took a deep, shuddering breath, and then slowly, deliberately, I let my last bit of defense fall. "You're right, Liam," I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. A final, complete surrender. Let's not play this game any longer." Closing the remaining distance between us completely, I sat down on the edge of his bed, my heart still pounding a wild, frantic rhythm in my chest. But turning back, I knew now, was no longer an option, no longer even a desire. Liam slowly leaned toward me, his face illuminated by the single dim bedside lamp. He looked into my eyes for a long, searching moment, then smiled that same slow, knowing smile. "Don't be afraid, Sophia," he said, his voice warm, reassuring. "Everything about this feels right." I looked away, a single hot tear escaping, a shiver running through my entire body, even if I couldn't fully admit it to myself. Not yet. I knew just how long, how desperately I had been waiting for this very moment, for someone to say those very words to me. But still, I couldn't entirely stop the last futile words of protest from slipping from my lips. "Liam, I'm a little scared," I said, my breathing still ragged, uneven. Because of everything." Liam just smiled again and ignored what I had said, as if he understood my fear but wasn't deterred by it. Maybe it was because he was still a little drunk. He leaned in quietly to my ear then and whispered, "Richard mustn't wake up." I knew exactly what he meant, that there had to be silence between us now. I don't quite know how, but I felt something huge, something powerful inside me then, and I knew I had to stop myself from making any sound that would give us away. Liam looked at me then and said something like, "I know, Sophia. Everything about this is right, and so are you." What did he know? I think he guessed. I think he understood me completely. He knew I couldn't help myself. And so I finally, completely closed my eyes. My hands clutched the sheets tightly, my body trembling with an emotion so overwhelming it was almost unbearable. I had to cover my own mouth with my hands so I wouldn't cry out. Liam was drunk, unguarded, uninhibited, and even that affected me deeply. The sheer thrilling excitement of the forbidden moment combined with everything else, creating an irresistible storm inside me. Time blurred, my thoughts dissolved, and the only thing left was the undeniable connection between us. At last, when it was finally over, I quietly laid Liam down properly in his bed, covering him up carefully with the rumpled sheets. Then, with a trembling hand, I locked his bedroom door from the outside. I wanted to take a quiet, cleansing shower to finally relax. I had absolutely no idea then what was going to happen next, what the morning would bring. I thought about it later in the shower, the hot water cascading over me. But at the same time, I felt strangely, unnervingly, nervous, almost uneasy. And yet, by the time I finally stepped out, my mind felt clearer, calmer than it had in years. Weirdly enough, I actually felt peaceful. I couldn't even be truly mad at myself, because my body, my very soul, felt just as relaxed as my conscious mind. I got dressed again in a profound silence, walked back to my own empty bed, and went to sleep almost instantly, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened at all. But the truth is, this wasn't just a fleeting moment of excitement, a reckless rush of desire. Nothing in life is ever that simple. And this was never going to stay simple either. It didn't stop here. It couldn't. Bigger, more intense things were bound to happen. And in the end, I knew with a chilling certainty that Richard was going to find out everything. This story, I now know, isn't over yet. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the lines we draw for ourselves, and how easily they can be washed away by a sudden, unexpected storm of emotion. Perhaps these raw, honest narratives speak to a part of us we rarely dare to acknowledge, the part that yearns for connection, for vitality, no matter the potential cost.